steering committee for Plano Area Democrats to be presenting over 15 judicial candidates today. There's going to be 2 additional representatives. This is absolutely amazing, folks, because this is going to give everybody here an opportunity to see just how strong that third branch of government is to us, right? The judicial branch. We've seen what Trump has done to erode the integrity of the judicial branch. We've seen his appointments. We've seen that the National Bar Association has stated that a lot of these individuals have been deemed unfit by the National Bar Association. So the best way for us to counter those lifetime appointments is by us doing our due diligence here in Collin County and in the state of Texas and electing these wonderful candidates that we have here today. Right, folks? You're going to come here to hear me speak. I'm going to ask and invite each of the Supreme Court candidates that are here with us today to please come up. I'm going to ask you to sit from left to right in order from, let's say, place 1 on the furthest left, all the way down to place 8 to the furthest right. Representatives, if you can please come up here as well. So candidates, you'll be standing up. Representatives, candidates will be sitting. Representatives will be standing. All right. So we have some ground rules. We're going to be starting with an opening statement from each individual here. It's going to be a 2-minute opening statement. For the representatives that are here solely to represent those that had a prior commitment, that 2 minutes is going to be the only thing that you'll have. For everybody else, you will also have a 1-minute closing statement, okay? We will have questions that we will be asking that have already been predetermined. However, if enough time is allowed, we will be getting questions from the audience. Now, audience, if we do ask for questions from you all, please remember that these are judicial candidates. And because they are judicial candidates, they cannot take certain questions that will commit them in the future for cases that have not come before them yet, okay? So, for example, if you have a Roe v. Wade question, you can't ask something to the effect of, if Roe v. Wade were to be decided today, how would you vote? Okay, or how would you decide that case? Because that is essentially committing them to making a decision before that case is even heard before them. So please keep that in mind. That's the reason why we will be asking questions so that they don't run afoul of these ethical guidelines. So with no further ado, we're going to ask Judge Amy Clark Meachum. You're going to be going first.
Hello, thank you all. Collin County Democrats. Good morning. I'm so excited to be here this morning. My name is Judge Amy Clark Meachum. I'm a 3-term district court judge from Travis County, Texas. I drove up this morning to be with you guys. Thank you. When I filed last month, I became the first woman in Texas history to file to run for Chief Justice of the Texas Supreme Court. I'm so excited to be taking on this challenge. I've been involved in Democratic Party politics for 20 years. First as an activist, just like you guys. Later as an elected official. I was elected in 2010. And I've taken the oath 3 times. I've taken the oath 3 times to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution. That oath matters to me. I know it matters to all these other judicial candidates in the room and all these other elected officials. And that's why I'm not at my kids' soccer games. I'm not just comfortable in my own house in Austin, Texas. I'm out traveling the state every weekend and as many weekdays as I can to run for this office because we are in the most consequential election of our lifetime and it's all hands on deck. So I love your support. I'm excited about the conversation we're going to have here today. I want you to understand I'm going to work for you if you make me your nominee, and I'm going to bring respect back to these benches. It is time for a new generation of judicial thought leaders to bring balance, some would say sanity, back to our all-Republican Supreme Court, and that's what we're going to do in 2020.
We have, again, for Chief Justice, we have Jerry Zimmerer. And I'm sorry, Jerry, before you start, candidates, one more thing that I forgot to tell you. We have Jeannie Lemon here in the front. At 30 seconds, she will be giving you a yellow card, and at times to stop, she will be flashing to you that red napkin. All right? Stop at the red napkin.
The red napkin, yes, thank you.
Very good.
30 seconds. Hi, Democrats.
2 minutes, I'm sorry.
Oh, 2 minutes.
At 30 seconds will be the yellow.
My name is Jerry Zimmerer, and I want to thank Amy for her running, and she was very welcome into this race. We are a big family. Thank you. It's not fair. It's not fair. Have you ever heard these words? Have you ever said these words? It's not fair. If you've been a parent, if you have children, you've heard that before. That's what this race is really about. That's what fairness is about. And you know what it is. My name is Jerry Zimmerer. There'll be a test at the end of this. Not Gerald, but it is Jerry. It'll be Jerry on the ballot. And I'm a justice on the Court of Appeals in Houston, Texas. I have 10 county jurisdiction: Austin, Brazoria, Chambers, Colorado, Fort Bend, Harris, Galveston, Grimes, Waller, and Washington. 24% of the population of Texas. And thanks to the efforts of myself and many other candidates who ran last time, we turned 24% of the population of Texas blue. Yeah. We did it in Fort Bend with Tom DeLay's district. We've done it in Harris County. We've done it in all the major areas. I'm asking for the opportunity to do the rest of Texas and represent on the court all Texans. And I will share with you very briefly, I'm waiting for my time to run out. I want to share with you, as I travel into the rural areas, I want you to know that I am not concerned about the non-political ballot. I'm not worried about our voters. We have the most motivated voters all across the state of Texas, in Texarkana, Tyler, Nacogdoches, everywhere. I have been down to Corpus and Nacogdoches, all over the state, and in the rural areas, people who were afraid to come out and speak are now speaking up. They're organizing. We are going to turn Texas blue. Thank you very much, Jerry Zimmerer.
We're thrilled to have 3 candidates that are all fighting in the primaries for, oh, I'm sorry, 2. I apologize. 2 for place 6 and 2 for place 7. Thank you. So, first up is going to be Larry Praeger.
Okay. Thank you very much. My name is Larry Praeger. I'm running for the Texas Supreme Court, which is your highest civil court. And when I started running, I would go around and say that your appellate courts, especially your Supreme Court, is the least sexy race on the ballot. And I said that, and finally someone came up to me and said, you ought to try running for tax assessor. So I quit saying that, but it's a very serious position in that it determines whether or not you've had a fair trial and your rights have been violated. And so people ask me all the time, what's the most important thing that I need to look at in a Supreme Court justice? Number 1 is, do they understand the nuts and bolts of trials? Have they been in the courtroom? Have they appealed cases? Have they argued at the Court of Appeals and at the Supreme Court? And number 2, have they represented people and understand the impact of litigation? Have they sat in office and listened to someone moan and groan under the burden of litigation? I've done that. I am a board-certified specialist by Texas Board of Legal Specialization, and I have appeared in every level of civil court, from the Supreme Court to the Court of Appeals, to Justice of the Peace Court, Probate Court, Family Court. And I will bring that experience in reviewing those cases to the Supreme Court. Because the Supreme Court, there's no jury, there's no witness box. There's just a review of the record. I've also spent 5 years on the grievance committee of the bar, and I'm a mentor to young lawyers who are establishing their practice. So you can read more about me, because the 30-second light is on. It's Larry, SC6, and that's 6 number, LarrySC6.com. Thank you very much.
Next up, we have Kathy.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Kathy Cheng, candidate for Texas Supreme Court, place 6. This is the same position I ran in 2018. Now, for some of you who know me, you know the reason I'm running. But for some of you who don't know me, I'm running because I am very passionate about the law. As an American by choice, I chose of all the countries in the world to be a citizen. I chose on my own, not through my parents, but on my own to become a U.S. citizen. So when I ran in 2018, people asked, why are you running? And I told them, because I'm passionate about the law. I've been a practitioner in Houston in cases involving family law, tax law, real estate, probate, commercial litigation. Majority of those will be heard on the Texas Supreme Court. But it's beyond that, folks. See, for me, my parents immigrated into this country because of political instability. And having that oath to become an American citizen is my job to do something, to be part of this community. And that means doing whatever I can. In 2018, when I lost the race by close to 4 points, after the election, my daughter asked me, Mommy, are you going to run again? At that point, I said no. Why? Because during the election last cycle, I was diagnosed with 2 tumors. My father died of stomach cancer. Knowing that I had 2 tumors, I still campaigned my heart out. After the election, I had to go through surgery. So at that point, I said, I'm not sure. My 11-year-old daughter says, Mommy, if you could run again, do it. I said, of all people, why would you ask Mommy to do that, knowing that I would have to miss so many things? She said, because I see what you're doing. You're helping people. You're out there educating people about the importance of having a voice. I'm Kathy Cheng. I stand to be a voice for all. With your help, with your support, we will flip the state of Texas. By the way, folks, vote up the ballot because your local candidates are so crucial compared to the candidates up at the top. So vote up the ballot. I'm Cheng for change, Cheng for change, Cheng for change.
Another race, place 7, we have Brandy Voss from McAllen, Texas. Brandy?
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having us. Yeah, I'm Brandy Voss, and I'm running for place 7, not running against anyone up here. I have a question for you. How many of y'all like Governor Abbott? What was that? Did you know that 7 of the 9 justices on the Texas Supreme Court were initially appointed by one of our Texas governors? They were not initially chosen by the electorate of the state of Texas. We haven't had a Democrat on the Texas Supreme Court in how long? Can anybody guess? Over 20 years. Right? And you can imagine the kind of jurisprudence that comes out of the court, that when all of the justices are cut from the same cloth, and they all have similar viewpoints, there's not debate that's going on. And I don't think that any Republican or Democrat can dispute that when there is a vigorous debate, that makes better law for the state of Texas. Okay? There are 4 seats that are going to be on the ballot this time. And if we don't take all 4 of them, then shame on us. We have got to do this. And I am working my butt off for you. I've been traveling around this state. I've been talking to Democrats and Republicans. And the biggest concern that I think that people have for our court system is fairness, right? We want judges that are fair. We want judges that are prepared. We want judges that understand the law. I've been practicing appellate law for 17 years. This is all that I've done. I'm board certified in civil appellate law, and I have been for the last 10 years. I've participated in approximately 1,000 appeals. And I've been a professor of constitutional law at the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley. So I've been teaching future law enforcement to respect the Constitution and our rights when they are interacting with the public. And we need, thank you. You have to start at the beginning, right? Our police officers need to understand the Constitution. I've been doing my part in teaching them to respect people when they interact with the public. And I'm getting the red towel of shame here. Thank you very much, Brandy Voss for Texas Supreme Court.
My understanding is that we do have a representative for Staci Williams who is also running for place 7. Is that correct?
That is right.
Wonderful.
Hi, my name is Trey McAtee. I'm here to speak for Judge Williams, who's actually down in the valley this weekend.
She apologizes for missing this and sent me in her place, which is really sad. I am sorry, I do apologize for that, but no, very much not. She is far more attractive than I am and far smarter as well. Wanted to let you all know, Judge Williams' commitment is to bringing balance and fairness back to the Supreme Court. Most of you are keeping track of what's going on in D.C. You're looking at what's going on in the Supreme Court. You see the cases coming up. You know how things are stacking out. You know that voter rights are going to start coming back to the states. You all know that Roe v. Wade is probably going to be dismantled and it's going to end up back in the state courts. We need Democrats on the state Supreme Court. These judicial races, including place 7, place 6, Chief Justice, they cannot be ignored. You need to place as much importance on them as you do at the top of the ballot where the president is, as you do in the Senate race and in the House races. They are absolutely critical this year. Think carefully about the people you vote for in the primary. Make sure they're the ones that you know can beat the Republican in the fall. And please come out and work during the general election to get these people elected. Thank you very much. Out of place 8, we do have a representative for Justice Gisela Triana. Go ahead, Irma.
Hi, everyone. My name is Irma Reyes. I'm here representing Justice Gisela Triana, who's running for the Texas Supreme Court, place 8. As you all know, the Texas Supreme Court has all of the justices on the bench. They're all Republican, and that's just simply not fair. Justice Triana has experience on flipping a whole bench, as she just did in this last election, 2018. She, along with Shari Kelly, Tom Baker, and Ed Smith, flipped the 3rd Court of Appeals. So now, instead of there being 6 Republicans, there's 4 Democrats and 2 Republicans on that bench. A little bit of background on Justice Triana. She was born and raised in San Antonio, Texas. Went to undergrad at UTSA and got her JD from UT Law. Ever since then, Justice Triana now has over 24 years of experience on every level of Texas judicial courts. She started off as a municipal court judge, justice of the peace, county court at law, district clerk, and district court judge, and now the third Court of Appeals justice, where she now serves. As you all know, I'm here today. Justice Triana would have loved to be here and meet every single one of you and bring her message of bringing fairness, balance, and transparency back to the Texas Supreme Court. And we hope we can count on your support.
Thank you so much, Irma. Starting with Judge Amy Meachum. Judge Meachum, your first question. What are the main functions of the Supreme Court of Texas, and how important is the role of Chief Justice?
All right, that's a great question. Before I answer that, can I say hi to Jen Burdick? She's in the room with her 2 twins, and she was my nanny, y'all, when I had my kids 14 years ago. I had twins, and she showed up today. She now lives here to come and watch us judicial candidates. I don't know how long those 2-year-olds are going to last, so I just wanted to say hi to her and thank her for being here. Thank you. I love you. So, back to the case at hand. The Supreme Court of Texas is the highest civil appellate court in the state. There are 9 justices. It is similar in many respects to kind of what most people know in the U.S. Supreme Court, also 9 justices. We are the highest civil appellate court. The Supreme Court is. What is different in Texas, which is different than I think 48 other states, is we actually have a bifurcated system at the top. There's a Supreme Court, and then there's a Court of Criminal Appeals for all the criminal cases, and there are several Court of Criminal Appeals candidates here as well, and I think I want them to stand up, because I don't know if we've said hi to them. So, and I wanted to say hi to them because they're doing the same thing we are, traveling all around the state. And you don't think people are interested in Texas Supreme Court, it's really hard to get them interested in the Court of Criminal Appeals. And so I wanted to say thank you to them because these are big important seats and big important races, and we have a real opportunity in 2020. to start to make some headway on these benches. By civil appeals, what we mean is everything that you can think of that's not criminal. So all civil litigation, car wrecks to big commercial disputes, cases involving the state of Texas, statutory challenges, probate cases, family cases, that entire gamut, and also juvenile cases end up at the Supreme Court. Because juvenile, rightly so, we treat as civil in the state of Texas. And so that's what it does. The Chief Justice position has several other more important, also very important roles governmentally in the government code. Appointment power for judges on special cases. You preside and actually pick the members of all the different committees that decide the rules in the state of Texas. Disciplinary rules. Oh, sorry, I'm seeing this red flag. She's right. I didn't know how long I had for each question. But I'll let Justice Zimmerer answer that same question, and he'll probably pick up where I left off.
It's going to be a very similar question to you. So it is going to be 2 minutes again through the questions, 30 seconds with the red at the end. I do apologize for this.
Sorry, I keep forgetting.
So the question to you, Justice, would be, what would be the impact if Democrats are able to replace at least one Supreme Court of Texas seat? And again, the same question still applies. How important is that role of Chief Justice?
Thank you so very much. That really is the crux of what we are all here doing. So, what would one person do? What can one person do? Well, Robert's Rules of Order talks about the majority has its way, but the minority has its say. The idea, that's true, it's right there in the preamble, read it. So, the idea isn't that the majority can't always rule, but the minority may have a position or an idea that is different and may be able to persuade the majority. So, I don't want to get into Robert's Rules of Order too much, but basically, like I did in a case that came before us, it was an arbitration agreement, employment arbitration agreement, where the Republicans had decided already, before I took the bench, that an employment arbitration agreement lasted for the lifetime of the employee, for the rest of their life. Why was that? Well, because the arbitration agreement itself is a contract, and it has a beginning date, the date that you started employment, but it had no end date. So, does it survive the termination of employment? And then re-employment, does it resurrect itself, or does it continue on for the rest of your life? The justices said it goes on for life. I wrote a reason, I wrote a dissent. It's called a dissent. So the importance of one person is that you write the dissent. That case is now going up to the Texas Supreme Court, and I wrote the legal reasoning why that contract should not be enforced after the termination of employment. What was the second part of that question?
The second part is going to be about the Chief Justice. Just how important is that role?
The Chief Justice role also sits as a de facto head. In addition to everything that Amy has just shared with you, the Chief Justice role sits as a de facto head of all of the committees, including the Rules Committee and the Rules of Evidence and Procedure. But just as importantly, the Office of Court Administration, the OCA. This is the computer systems that manage all of our courts across the state. I happen to have a background in business, law, technology, finance, and project management. So I've not just been a lawyer, I've sat on boards, I've owned IT consulting companies, I've been across the globe. So I have special knowledge that I think will be applicable in these roles. I am credentialed by the Project Management Institute, by Six Sigma, and by Agile, if any of those mean anything. Thank you.
Larry, how does the Supreme Court of Texas differ from the U.S. Supreme Court?
Well, I think, as Amy alluded to earlier, it's bifurcated. The Supreme Court handles only civil cases, unlike the U.S. Supreme Court that has civil and criminal cases. And that's probably the major difference. Also, as a state court, we interpret the Constitution of the state, and it must be within the parameters of what the federal government or the U.S. Constitution says. In other words, a state can give you more rights, but the state can't give you any less than the U.S. Supreme Court says. And since we're talking about the uniqueness of the Texas Supreme Court, someone alluded to earlier about how the Texas Supreme Court handles juvenile cases because they're under the civil rules. But in Texas, juvenile cases are quasi-criminal. So you have the Supreme Court of Texas reviewing juvenile adjudications or convictions, but they must apply the rules applicable to criminal defendants as well. So when you're selecting your candidate for the Texas Supreme Court, bear in mind that juvenile adjudications, including certifications of juveniles as adults, keep in mind a candidate who has the experience not only of defending juveniles, but of prosecuting juvenile cases, as I have earlier in my career. When I started, I was assistant county attorney, Bell County, Texas, for misdemeanor prosecution, juveniles, and all civil matters. So that's a unique facet of the Texas Supreme Court, is a quasi-criminal juvenile cases. I think she's flagged me.
She's flagged. Next question would be to Kathy.
Thank you, Larry.
Kathy, how much does the Supreme Court affect everyday Texans?
Okay. That was one of the hurdles I had in 2018 because, like one of the candidates, I think it was Amy, who mentioned that it was a very difficult, not just for the Texas Supreme Court candidates, but also Court of Appeals candidates to travel and campaign for this position. I found out from 2018 that a lot of the voters didn't know why this race was important, which is why they just forgotten about not just the Supreme Court races, but also the courts down the valley, because they couldn't figure out why does it matter if I vote for that position. So what I had to do was explain to them cases that's handed down, even though you may not be a party to it, or you may not be a party before any of the courts in your lifetime, it in a way impacts you. So Justice Zimmerer gave you an example about the arbitration clause. For those of us who has ever worked and signed one of those contracts, a lot of times those arbitration clauses are within that contract. So even though we may not be parties to that, we are impacted by the decisions handed down from the upper courts. Another example, the case that I used, was the Alamo Heights case where the teacher was sexually harassed on a daily basis, grabbed in the buttocks, harassed, everything you could possibly think of on a daily basis. And I took those facts and told the voters that this is a problem, because in that case, the 9 justices, the Supreme Court justices of the Texas Supreme Court at the time said, well, that's not sexual harassment, because yes, didn't matter who I spoke to, whether it was Republicans or Democrats, they were just appalled, because our justices felt that that was not sexual harassment, it was just daily work bullying, because the perpetrator who did that was of the same gender, and one of them was LGBTQ. So therefore, there's not that intent of sexual harassment, so they said nothing. Well, in the U.S. Supreme Court case, and something similar to that, they did rule that same gender did have sexual harassment. So that's the difference in that. And also, in the Texas Supreme Court, we don't appoint justices unless it's through vacancies through death or appointment to a federal position.
Thank you. All right. And for Brandy, your question is going to be, what are the biggest changes you think we need to make to our Texas justice system?
That's a good question. You know, there are a lot of Texans who are basically barred from the courthouse because of the financial hurdles to obtaining access to justice. And when you can't even get redress because you can't afford to hire a lawyer, that's just wrong. It's not fair. And so we need, in my opinion, the biggest change that we need to make to our justice system is that we need to be actively seeking every source of funding for legal aid. We need to be providing resources and benefits for lawyers who agree to take cases for free, to encourage them to do more pro bono work. There are a series of forms that have been created to help people who are trying to represent themselves. We need to do more, I think, in along those lines to provide more self-help resources for people, because it should not be so difficult to get your case decided and get your disputes resolved, and it should not be so expensive to the point where it's impossible for you to get redress for your grievances. There are a lot of commentaries out there right now talking about bail reform. That's not so much in the purview of the Texas Supreme Court's role, but that's another problem I think that we have in the state of Texas. And I can talk to everybody about that later if you want.
Brandy, why don't you hold on to the microphone? We're actually running out of time with our Supreme Court candidates, so I'm going to go ahead and ask you to go ahead and give us your 1-minute closer. And again, say will apply, 30 seconds with the yellow, red will be to stop.
Thank you. You know, I agree with what all these candidates have said about paying attention to your courts. You know, the courts are the place that has protected the rights of vote. The courts have protected the right to marry who you love. The courts have provided access to justice, and we should care about who sits on those courts because they make important decisions that affect everybody's lives every single day. You need to research your candidates. Go to our websites, all of our websites, and find out who it is that matches up most with your preference. But you should be looking for someone who can be fair, someone who knows the law, someone who's done the work. And in my race, I think that I am that candidate, and I would love to have your vote. And thank you so much for inviting us here and giving us the chance to talk to you all.
Thank you very much. Kathy,
Thank you. I want to thank the Plano Area Democrats for this invitation. Essentially, what this boils down to, all of us are qualified, okay? But then, if we really want to turn Collin County blue, or the state of Texas blue, to flip the White House, we have to select candidates who's relatable to the people. Because relatability equates to electability. In 2018, we've proven that. This seat is electable, I'm electable. So with your help and support, and continued support, folks, we will flip the Texas blue. I'm Kathy Cheng.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here. Some of you may remember that I ran for the 5th District Court of Appeals in the cycle right before it flipped. And in that race, I think we got 47, 48%. And I go around and I hear a lot of times, how are you going to restructure the system? Sometimes it's not restructuring the system, it's restructuring who's operating the system. And if you elect me to the Supreme Court, you will have someone up there who has represented people against the state. Go to my website. I've taken a case and argued at the Supreme Court against overreaching by the state against individuals. And what we don't have, we hear a lot about diversity these days. We don't have the diversity of experience on that Supreme Court. Ask yourself, is there anyone who represents individuals, who's not beholden to the governor who's appointed them, big business, or others? And if you want that person, look at LarrySC6.com.
Thank you. There are 3 things I would like to do on the Court of Appeals. The first one is I'd like to bring back briefing attorneys. The dockets on the Courts of Appeals have been so heavy that we have eliminated briefing attorneys that come on for 1 year and then roll off, in favor of 2 staff attorneys that are there forever and ever. And I believe that we're making a mistake. I would work to bring back briefing attorneys. Number 2, I would work to implement a mediation process for the appellate courts. We don't have mediators like they do in the federal court, and I would like to see us attempt to do mediation in the appeals court the same way they do in federal court, where, by the way, they get about 32% settling cases, which would mean less work for us. Anyway, there's other things that I would like to do. I'll be happy to chat with you about those. If I haven't met you yet, please come up to me afterwards. I'll stick around. Jerry Zimmerer, Jerry for Justice. Jerry. Jerry.
All right, thank you everyone. I mean, y'all came out to listen to judicial candidates on a pretty Saturday, so thank you so much for your time. I'm so happy that we're taking on this challenge in 2020, all of us. We are so bullish about our chances in 2020 that we have competitive primaries in the Democratic Party for statewide races. Y'all, we haven't had that in 20 years. And so let's think about that for a second and where we are in the year 2020. We have to bring balance back in this key moment to the all-Republican Supreme Court, and we need a new generation of judicial thought leaders to do it. I'm proud to be up here, I'm proud to be running, I'm proud of my 10-year record on the bench. You can look me up. My name is Judge Amy Clark Meachum. I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a lawyer, I'm a small-town girl turned district court judge, and with the help of everyone in this room and the army we're going to build, I'm going to become the first woman ever elected Chief Justice of the Texas Supreme Court.
Ladies and gentlemen, the candidates for Texas Supreme Court. Here we are. Thank you all so much. All right, at this time we'd like to invite